Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Where's Wally podcast. If your view of the screen looks like mine, I am super duper bright and there's weird colors going on. It's because of the screens and the lighting in here. But we're both going to have to deal with it. So this is version 4 or 5 of part 1 of the Oath Keepers. So what I'm doing in this video is I'm going through all this leaked data. Basically, it's all from an insider threat, just one singular insider threat, and then we're checking out what these guys are saying internally. Part 1 here, we're going to show 5 videos. And we're going to do that right up front. I'm kind of going to listen in, see what they're doing, give some criticisms of that. These are mostly training videos. Actually, they're all training videos. Then we have very, very redacted chats from Signal. We're going to go through those, and they bring up some decent points. The one thing I could say about this is going into this, I see the Oath Keeper is just kind of a joke. Let's say I'm not saying that my opinion has changed at all because it really has not. It's a guys' club. Okay, there's not much more to it. It's a bunch of dudes. They're kind of like-minded. Although, sure, there is some structure to this organization, but it's not. It's certainly not what the government has put it out to be. I really don't see these guys as a threat to essentially anything. Now, that being said, I've only gone through maybe 5% of the data that's in the folder. I started with one person, and my opinion could change towards the end. But a lot of it's just kind of bro stuff. I really thought that they would be pretty white supremacist ish. Turns out that opinion seems to be also incorrect. And maybe the third opinion would be these guys are essentially, if you're not like Christian or these guys specifically out in Utah, um, if you're not Mormon, you're just basically you're going to hell, right? And it seems like none of that actually exists. Um, these guys on the leadership level, this with this kind of the first part 1 here is focusing on 2 leaders. We'll cover those in as soon as I pull up the slides. They're not. There's so far, and I've read a lot of their internal stuff. I'm not everything. Obviously, it's a lot of stuff to go through. They literally haven't committed a crime at this point in my journey uh, uh, pursuing this. You know, pursuing this topic. But okay, could that change? Yeah, of course it could. There's some other states in there. There's some other groups. Perhaps the Oath Keepers are being caught into this wheelhouse of people, and maybe most of it's just the American patriots. It's possible, right? Of the Oath Keepers, as you're probably aware, the leader was arrested, or multiple members of their leadership, national leadership, let's say, were arrested. Many of those were just pardoned by Trump. They We'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of the chat segments. But let's get moving on to these. Let's get moving on to these slides I made, and I made a bunch of slides. So this is actually was twice as long, and I decided, it's almost not consumable at some crazy length. I'd lose all you guys after slide 20. So let's boom. Okay, so Oath Keepers. This is their insider threat exploitation. This is me taking all this data from the insider threat and building something. Now, a lot of this data isn't tabled like I've shown on the podcast before, where like Excel spreadsheets and lists of names. So far, I haven't come across anything that's kind of intel worthy. Now, I could pick out these individual chats and visualize them in an analytical program. I don't think that's necessary for this. If, as I'm going through these, after I'm unzipping and I'm using various forensic tools to help me sort and look through, I just don't think that's really plausible for this one. It may become plausible, and if it does, I'm going to add it to a video. So But here's the big question, as far as I see it: Are the Oath Keepers America's line in the sand, or are they an enemy of the state? So, next slide. Let's ask the question or describe the answer. What is a data dump? Okay, so typically data dumps are leaked. It's leaked information of a company or an organization, like from a hack, as a result of a hack, right? These data dumps can typically be found on the dark web. Dark web's a great place. Hacker forums, internet messaging services like Telegram, Discord. They're shared broadly. Um, the one thing I've always liked about data dumps in general is that it's raw data, absolutely raw data in many cases. So no analysis has been done on it. Now, that being said, from, let's say, from an Intel perspective, it's like, hey, well, okay, so was misinformation added into the greater group of data intentionally because they believe that at some point they would be hacked, and is that present in the data? For this, probably not. I'd say it's very unlikely. These guys kind of knew each other; they had rapport with each other. But in other dumps from countries, yeah, sure, that's possible. It's even plausible. It's not when you have a bunch of truth and then you have a lie. Sometimes it's really easy to see that. It just depends on the sophistication of the country or the entity that was hacked. Um, Data dumps can be created by accident, right? Like, on multiple occasions, maybe you got a new employee and that employee uh, threw a whole bunch of corporate data into an open S3 bucket. Boom, data dump, accessible by everybody. But otherwise, insiders, hackers, and accidents. Data dumps, what they provide, where the real value is, the real intelligence value is, they provide an inside look into an entity that was targeted, and that information was never meant to be public. So you're getting the inside conversations, you're getting the inside view. When you're trying to judge people, uh, this isn't the news, right? This is like actually what they said. And some rules of thumb with this: if you never say anything or never send anything that you don't want on the you know front page of the New York Times. I mean, look what happened to them. This is not new. This happens thousands and thousands of times a week. So try to imagine that, and essentially they did a pretty good job. They really didn't say anything. They do have some OPSEC, and they're fairly savvy with a few things, but we'll talk about that. But for the most part, so why should you care? Okay, so I this whole series with data dumps, right? All of you, all my subscribers, anybody who views this video, you're in a data dump. Period. Right? All of your information is out there somewhere. Maybe not in one spot, but over a period of time, everything about you is in the open. If you never had a social media account at all, sure, maybe you could argue that, but then the government gets hacked too. OPM's a great example. So let's say you never had social media and you're like, well, shit, how my social security number? Well, hacks like OPM, you know. Uh Obviously, you know, kind of the more social media you have, the more online accounts you have, online banking. If you sign up to a certain amount of money and you get car washes, right? Everything that's digital, that's not actually a tangible physical asset, is vulnerable. So your level of involvement with the internet, in some ways, does determine how susceptible you are to be in these data dumps. Um, Most of the time, it's not your fault though. The really key point: you can really spend a lot of time on your personal OPSEC. You can really pay for programs. You can protect your data. You can encrypt. There's all sorts of things that you can do, and it's just sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes it's another entity. You did everything great, point A to point B, the way you should, um, and then sometimes it's just not your fault. Well, third parties get breached all the time. Uh, but also consider this, right? Uh, your enemies also are in data dumps. So if it's not just you, you're not alone. So if you need to find stuff on people, data dumps are a good place and a good resource to start. Okay, so who are the Oath Keepers? Like I kind of said before, my opinions not really changed as much except for a few factors. I thought it really interesting that they're not as racist as I thought they would be. Like, I thought they would be completely anti-Semitic, and really, essentially, they're not at all. Which was pretty big a factor for me. They actually talk about it too. Like, we'll get into that. But here's their emblems. Okay, so right off the bat, the bottom right emblem is, to me, all these emblems are geared towards military. They're kind of military-esque. Um, and I think that was the goal. There's not much to it. It's just Oath Keepers, Guardians of the Republic, not on our watch, etc. So this is not from the data dump. This is just from the internet. So a few key points that pertain to this. They were formed in March 2009. So they have a leadership. They have national, state, county, local chapters. Right, all 50 states have some type of Oath Keepers presence. Uh, Obviously, we're going to get into why that's not really a super big issue. Um, Rhodes is one of the leaders. He's the gentleman you might have seen with an eye patch. Well, kind of funny story about how he got that, or sad story, whichever way you want to look into it. Periodically, they issue calls, and it calls to quote unquote action. Right. Um their on the ground activity is left to the chapters. So there's not the senior leadership or the national leadership does not tell the state leadership or county, local, etc. You have to do this more like a newsletter. There's not much to it. It's like it's or okay, as a group, we have these bylaws, and if you're in this state, the state just voted and enacted this law. Do not follow this law. Okay, it's against the Constitution in their perception of it. Their ideology uh, centers around basically obligation of oath, and that's the oath that all of you in the crowd, and I wish I kind of had this up here, but it's the oath you take when you become a firefighter, a police officer, or military. Uh, you know, uh, Protect it. It's there's actually a few different oaths, so everybody kind of thinks it's one, but it's actually a lot different. The oath for officers is different than enlisted. The oath for firefighters is different than police officers, etc. And it varies in some ways, very slightly per state. Um, so, in some senses, it's only based on the Constitution. Um, so, the oath, to defend the Constitution is, in general, what the oath keepers, when they say that oath is gospel, they are talking about to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So, one of their caveats is they only obey commands. Only obey commands regardless of their origin if they do not violate 10 specific types of orders that the organizations consider unconstitutional, unlawful, and immoral violations of the natural rights of U.S. citizens. Specifically, okay, here's the 10 orders, and I'll kind of read through these because these will kind of become important. They seem, if you're not familiar with these type of people, these seem extreme. Really kind of not, right? I mean, it's some of it's already established federal law, you know. So we will not obey any orders to arm the American people. We will not obey any orders to conduct warrantless searches of the American people, their homes, vehicles, papers, or effects, such as warrantless house to house searches for weapons and persons. In some of their documentation, I didn't show it in this one. This will be in part 2 or 3. They bring up Hurricane Katrina when the police went around house to house and took guns. That was illegal, and they lost that in federal court later. So that's one of the reasons I think um, number 2 isn't there. We will not obey any order to detain American citizens as unlawful enemy combatants or to subject them to trial by military tribunal. We will not obey orders to impose martial law or a state of emergency on a state or to enter with force onto a state without the express consent and invitation of the state's legislature and governor. We will not obey orders to invade and subjugate any state that asserts its sovereignty and declares the national government will be in violation of a compact by which that state entered the Union. We will not obey any orders to blockade American cities, thus turn them into giant concentration camps. We will not obey any order to force American citizens into any form of detention camps under any pretext. We will not obey orders to assist and support the use of any foreign troops on U.S. soil against the American people to keep the peace or maintain control during an emergency or under any other pretext. We will consider such use of foreign troops against our people to be an invasion and an act of war. We will not obey any orders to confiscate the property of the American people, including food or other essential supplies, under any emergency pretext whatsoever. We will not obey any orders which infringe on the right of the people to free speech, to peaceably assemble, and to petition their government for a redress of grievances. And number 10, I actually think there are some rare occasions where it's actually okay. I'm not sure the extent of that, but maybe that's something we can look up at a different time. Or if you know, please comment. Maybe that's the U.S. troops overseas. There's some weird rules around that one, but and before I forget, all of my slides I will be posting into the Discord in a PDF version. So my face won't be here in the left corner, blocking some of the view. But just so you know, making all of this, the redacted version, available to everybody. Okay. So what are my initial thoughts, right? Right off the bat, they are a hierarchical organization. A little bit more organized than I thought they would be. Is that a big deal? Not really. But it does show some sign of structure. So, a lot of these members are from law enforcement, from the military, from firefighters, EMTs, etc. So they are in some way um, very used to structure, chain of command, and they have that as well. It's just not as advanced of a chain of command. So, and they conduct some planning. This is on a local level, so remember this specific group we're talking about here is Utah based. So within Utah, within that specific group, and it seems to me like there's multiple groups within Utah. That being said, this group alone does do some training. They do some get-togethers. They talk about preparedness and a variety of topics that we'll get into. Actually, I'm going to try to move me over. Let's see if I can do that. That might help just a little bit. Yeah, that's a little better. Just for now, let's save that. Okay. So they're moderately prepared and organized. I wasn't really surprised with them being in Utah. A lot of the members are Mormon, part of it's my understanding of the Mormon faith. A lot of Mormons that I've known over the years, from the Marine Corps at least, their families were very prepared, right? Like at minimum a year's worth of food and fuel. I mean, armories, ammo, not just having seeds isn't going to help you in an emergency. Like these guys have crops in the ground all year, and they have uh, greenhouses, for the wintertime. So at least something's always happening with agriculture, which that's not a dumb thing to do, right? I mean, stuff does happen. Look what just happened in North Carolina just a few months ago. Like I said, they're comprised of veterans, law enforcement, first responders. They're not overly tech savvy. So a video I decided to put in part 2, almost hilarious. It's one of those Zoom calls where like, hey, can you hear me click? Whenever I click, does something happen? And the guy's like, I got you 10 out of 10, buddy. And just like, oh, wait, I lost you, and it's back and forth. Like 30% of the talking is them trying to figure out if everybody else can hear them. Uh, so that's pretty funny. But I mean, some of the stuff they talk about in those videos is just almost common sense. One thing they are is they are tactical gear sluts. Okay, so the stuff that they wear in some of these videos you'll see, it didn't hit me at first. I'm not going to say right here because I want you to see it for yourself. But it made sense once I figured out why. Um, like I said, some training in the videos that we're about to watch, I would take a platoon of junior Marines who weren't even infantry, and we would 100% win in a firefight against these guys. Like, um, the training scenario is only quasi realistic. Like, you know, in the situation where they were, and if you knew there was a threat coming your way, you wouldn't wait till they're like 40 yards away from you to open fire. Like, I don't know why people think that everything's a Mexican standoff, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. They're certainly patriotic. They do love America. When I think they legitimately do want what's best for America. Um, and let's say that comes in a lot of different ways, but no doubt about it, they're patriotic Americans. Uh, and right off the bat, there's no real evidence at all um, that they want to overthrow the government. And as a matter of fact, some of the messages between them internally leads them to think that, oh, yeah, this is like some type of black flag or red flag operation, and they're more worried about getting blamed for something they didn't do. So, which is interesting in itself. Okay, so I have to switch over here, and I'm gonna pause it here in a second so you can see. But right off the bat, right? I don't know if everybody sees it, but pretty cool tactical gear. The little red scarf. It's not overly smart. That guy's wearing galoshes to the left. Like, it's very tactical, bro. All right, focus on this guy. I'm gonna try to pause it. Boom. Oh man, it messed up. Let me keep going though. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a red tip on his rifle. This is all airsoft. Literally.
We love you, Major.
So what they're doing here, this is simulated patrolling operations. In the real world, their dispersion's not very good. That guy had a weird face mask. I mentioned this guy's galoshes are just spectacularly tactical. All right, so this guy's coming back. I'm not going to try to pause again because it's kind of one of the longer videos. But there we go, airsoft, 100%. I don't know if this location that they're at is some type of training facility. I assume that's what it is. That red flannel is not very tactical. These guys are loving it, man. They're just eating it up.
Copy that. Talk is approaching convoy. Let's do a quick hot wash and then resettle. Be advised, we got reports that there is an enemy force At your 6 o'clock at about 600 yards, closing rapidly, break. Advise you guys to neutralize the checkpoint and get out of there.
Neutralize the checkpoint. So I don't know if that, let's call him the range guy.
I say again, there is an enemy QRF approaching your rear approximately 15 minutes out.
I don't know if he's talking to the guys who are close here or the guys that you're going to see just in a second.
Weapons range. I mean,
we're driving closer, right? They're egressing to the location. But literally, the second you could see those guys, you would start shooting. Two, you only have people on the road. Having people on the left and right side would be smart. Having people with Overwatch, that would be smart. If you can, the guy in the middle wearing the camouflage, the snow camouflage with the black vest, which sticks out like a sore thumb, right? He's the only one who's even moderately behind an engine block. Bullets will fly through the rest of that vehicle like it's not even there.
I drive up as fast as I could and bail out. There you go. Oh, this is good. Okay, good. Let's get in the truck. I want to get it.
Not sure what happened in the middle, but it's kind of like they just decided today wasn't the day to have an actually,
vehicles first is going to win this one.
Something to actually stop the roadblock. Why would you drive closer just for a chat? Like, kind of now they're just kind of fake yelling at each other. So the tactics. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Mexican standoff. Not smart to get into a Mexican standoff in the first place, right? So you see how these guys are bunched together in 3 groups? You have the aggressors, the defensive, and now they're shooting airsoft at each other, right? But in real life, when you bunch people up into these small groups, they're really easy targets. Small bursts, rips through the vehicles.
Perfect.
If you were going to attack these guys using smoke first, I don't know if you noticed to the back right, it looks like a random civilian vehicle just pulled up.
They're flying in like at 45.
This is a total clusterfuck. But in reality, I mean, this would just be a turkey shoot.
You seriously tell me none of the Op 4 has gotten hit? Hey, they're all bunched. We should have given our guys some grenades. Did we give them pyro? We'll have pyro. Why not?
Huh. The civilian vehicle's like, okay, fucking weirdos, can I just get through, please?
See how bunched up the Op 4 is? It's like it's like and then you heard it, and it's who fires first, and then it popped off after that, right? Because they both had plans. We knew the Op 4 and our guys, they were going to go live. You told them to go after the checkpoint. These guys are like, we're going to light them up as soon as they come in here. It was just this standoff. In the real world, they probably would have started capping about 300 yards out. That's what I was telling.
That's the
real world's
one of the only truthful things. Probably further than 300.
Right.
Let's hide this video. Okay. Right off the bat. Okay. Airsoft can be a decent tool for training. It's realistic enough that you can use a realistic enough airsoft weapon and you can learn to clear houses, right? So before you are in a shoot house with live ammo, I can see that as being valid. Lucas Botkin has a video where he takes a Japanese professional airsoft player, right? And they have him in, I think, Idaho or wherever his range is. And pretty incredible. Like this guy's in Japan has very strict gun laws, right? He's never fired an actual weapon, and so they walk him through safety, and they have a translator. And this guy is scary good for his first time shooting a gun. I mean, like he's shooting a real rifle and a real pistol, and his transitions at a real level. So if some validity to the airsoft, watch that video, and I'll post it somewhere in the comments. Let's move on to the next. Um, Let me pause it there. I had issues with sound. So when I tried test recording, um, I can hear the video and sound, but for some reason, StreamYard can't. So I had to download the videos, put them on StreamYard, and watch them that way. We'll talk about the actual stuff in here first. So uh, this is a type of breaching using thermite sticks. This is common. Uh, uh, it's a quieter option than using explosives, right off the bat. So they don't last very long. The military ones probably last a little longer than these. These are not necessarily. I wouldn't call these novelties because they're. I mean, they're real. They'll burn a hole through a solid chunk of metal, but these are about $90 to $120 each. They're very effective against chains and locks. Um, if you have uh, an odd door and you don't have explosives, but you have items like this, I mean, welding rods, cutting torches, you can, basically cut the hinges off the door, depending on whether it opens in or out. That can be uh, important knowledge if you're trying to do something like this. But yeah, they're effective. I've never seen this on a video like this. Only only firsthand, but it's pretty cool. So let's pull up that video real quick, and this one's pretty short.
See if the middle is closed here.
How close do you go to the middle?
Right there.
Yeah, doesn't burn very long, but I thought that was pretty interesting. That's if they were talking about having explosives like in these chats and things like that, then I would have been a bit more concerned because the licensing for destructive devices like that is pretty significant, and I doubt 99.9% of these guys have those licenses. Could be wrong, but I'm just saying. Let's go on. This is another training video, and I'm just going to let this one play through, and then I'm going to comment.
They'll just have to wait 10 minutes. Oh, they're coming up fast.
There we go, boy. You gonna shut them down, Mark?
No! Hold on! Hold on! Stop! They'll just have.
Okay. I don't know if you saw that guy run from the left to the right, right? Like pretty close to miss in this. Yeah, they're having a good time. Okay, is this real training? Yeah, is it realistic? Probably not. So think of it this way, right? You got these guys in this Dodge Ram pickup truck, right? If you wanted to get through those RTVs, just drive right through them, right? Yeah, you're going to mess up your truck, right? But you'll definitely make it through. So, like for example, you see that tire on top of the RTV right there, and there's some other gear, right? Start setting that stuff out in the middle of the road in front of you. Like give yourself some distance. They hit some of that stuff, the tire flips up. Trucks, especially smaller vehicles, can get caught on those things. There's a lot of ways that you can funnel traffic the way you want and slow things down, and obviously use the environment that you have, right? So if you were doing a checkpoint like this, like, and unless there was no other option, right? But we've already seen in the previous videos that there's curves on these roads, right? You you want to have an eye on the enemy before the enemy has an eye on you, and they're basically they forgot that class. And remember, most of these guys are law enforcement, not military, so they might not have ever known this. All right, let me pause it on the actual PowerPoint, and let's go up here. This one's real simple. This one's very short. I'm just going to let it play through. Yep. I mean, there's a lot of videos like this, and this is dumb. I mean, just having a good time. I mean, is there a you could say, yeah, there's some tactical value to getting everybody together and learning how on these open vehicles versus closed vehicles, right? So these are off-road recreational vehicles. How do you communicate while you're in those? Everything's super loud, right? They're not using professional level communication devices. Obviously, they're using little handheld radios. Are they able to communicate? If not, should they use hand signals? All sorts of other considerations like that. But I mean, my real opinion of this is just they're dudes having a good time, kind of. I mean, it's to be honest with you, some of this would be kind of fun, right? You know, driving around Utah in the winter and shooting airsoft and stuff. I mean, I'd rather like get some tactical shooting training, but yeah, these are just bros having a good time. Now this one's kind of fun. This one's also fairly short. So, let's see, this is a minute 18 seconds. All right, I'm gonna throw this on real quick. Okay. So a lot to unpack here. So you would want in reality to do something like this with night vision. And if you had night vision, you would turn the lights off, right? Because it would flare the lens. It's too bright, right? If everything becomes just kind of a green blob, right? And then you can't see shit, right? And then if you have the night vision, you need the IR laser on your rifle so you can aim. Because everybody thinks so. Well, you know, somehow I'm just going to fit these, you know, uh, binoculars or monoculars, right? And aim. Not how it works. It's not how night operations work. You have a white laser, which is IR, and that is how you aim. Um, for the for these types of people doing this type of training, I mean, this is probably how they would try to do it in real life, right? But if you were going up against some type of trained force, you imagine if there's a natural disaster or some type of civil unrest, like in a lot of situations, there's no electricity, right? So you're not competing with house lights and street lights and things like that. If you're not competing with that, that type of light pollution wearing night vision, you can see these guys from quite a long way away, right? So you could avoid them, right? You could turn off your lights, and you could come in from the side. You could do a side L-shaped ambush, something like that. I don't know. You probably heard the airsoft BBs like pinging, tinging. Um, totally cool, totally fun, right? Like I said, these are bros having a good time. Oops, let's pause that. Okay. So now what are we going to do? We're going to get into the leadership, just two of them this time for part one, right? And this is the first guy. Now, for YouTube and for anybody out there, these guys are very much in the news. Um, I've redacted all the links, all the individuals who were not released. So this is Bobby Kent. She's the current leader for the Utah Oath Keepers, as far as I can tell. After kind of this got exposed a bunch of new stuff, and obviously the January 6th, a lot of these guys kind of went quiet. They definitely all the channels. Like if for some reason I didn't redact good, which I think I did. Everything's covered. But this guy's got a family. He was a Las Vegas sheriff. There's a lot of hate towards this guy out there in the open. Let's say he's, as you can see in this comment to the left of me. People think he's a coward, hide behind the badge. He makes the honest, heroic, dedicated, and caring officers look bad. You want to ease tension between police and citizens, hold officers accountable. Within this data dump, I mean, this guy's got, don't show all of them, but, he's got tons of placards. He's got, quite a few accolades from his time as a law enforcement officer. Yeah, and people aren't happy. I don't know exactly what incident, and I didn't go to that link just because I didn't really think I needed to for this, but yeah. So he did, served from 93 to 2016, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. So, uh, you know, obviously, if you're a law enforcement officer, you know some tactics to be able to take somebody and subdue them, right? You know how to shoot at a probably for him, I would imagine a little bit higher than a basic level. Um, but there's other concerns that I have from my intelligence background that we'll cover. So we're talking hundreds and hundreds of photographs, right? And I was looking at these pictures and I just couldn't figure it out, right? I was like, caliber 6 mil. And I was like, that's so weird. It was like, why would you? And then I'm thinking, like, 6 mil of viable caliber? Like, what the hell's going on here? No, it's 6 millimeter BBs. Over here, the bottom right, kind of by my head, says manufactured in Taiwan. So I looked it up and I was like, oh my God, it's goddamn airsoft, right? And I'm thinking, wow, these guys are actually pretty stacked. Like, because when you're looking at a picture, if it's not an obvious airsoft gun, sometimes it's hard to tell. None of these have the little, uh, the little bright orange or bright red flash hider in the front. So, yeah, they got me. I was like really trying to figure this out, and it's just all airsoft. These are pictures of some gear. Uh, you know, a lot of these, of course, they're going to have go bags, right? It's a pretty common thing amongst veterans, military. Uh, a lot of people have these. It's not. So one thing I want to probably say, a lot of things that they have in these pictures are smart things to have. Like these guys have bags like that knife in the center picture right over there to me. That's called a tracker knife. I actually have essentially the same knife. You see they have that's a right there, that little Zippo thing that's full of matches. They're waterproof matches, extra socks, extra clothing, multi layers. There's obviously a med kit of some sort and a poncho in the top picture. But one thing that actually my picture is covered in. So let me move me over to this side. Boom. Okay. All right. I'll need to figure this out for the next video, right? I just really wanted to get this out. But so you see these police uniforms, right? Obviously, these guys are former law enforcement, right? So it's something that I guess I would like to let me actually move this again. Let me move me. And I don't know what this looks like on the video, but I guess we'll find out together, huh? Okay. So if you're former law enforcement, you can dress up and you can go be a cop. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, even especially from a reserve capacity. But let's say, although I don't have the opinion that they are, and there's no evidence that they're going to, like if these guys put on their uniforms, right? Uh, they have badges. I'll show you that in the next slide, right? Uh, if they wanted to infiltrate somewhere maliciously, they have the uniform, they know the talk, they know some of the people, you know, depending on how they talk, maybe they could get it off. But they could get into there's a potential for them to get into a restricted area armed. Uh, maybe I don't think that's 100%, but I think the capability to do that actually does exist. Now, another thing to consider, why are these groups fairly popular amongst the veteran community and law enforcement and those type of veterans, right? Uh, a lot of policies that have came out over the years really are forcing some of these guys into positions like this where they think they have to I'm going to need people on my side, you know, defund the police, right? They feel that there's been a destruction of law and order. Uh, I don't necessarily disagree with that. Um, they're in some places they've been forced to enforce laws that they see as unconstitutional, and because of things like defund the police and their perception of what actually happens in a law enforcement environment versus what the media sees, they see their job is now having a significantly elevated risk to it. And I don't disagree with that either. Okay. So, like I mentioned, here's some proof that he is an oath keeper, right? This is self posted. Um, his name, that's his membership certificate. And then, a real basic description of what oath keeper are. Like now that he's signed up, what are his quote unquote responsibilities? And to the right, like I said, this is an honor guard badge. There are a lot of other badges within the data dump, but I decided, you know, honor badge. Somebody's good. I think that if you were to emulate this, people would be like, "Why are you wearing your honor guard badge?" But I don't know. I'm not a cop. I've never been law enforcement. So if you see this and I'm wrong, correct me. Let me know in the comments, please. Please. Just something I thought was interesting. Okay, so let me move me. Where should I move me this time? I'm going to move me up here. Let's try that. I'll move me down just a tad. I think that'll work for a little bit. Okay. All right. So what these slides are is they're internal conversations within two groups. One of them is the Oath Keepers state leadership, and the other one is their intel section. So they have a signal chat, which is basically intelligence or communications in some way. It's really kind of uh, it's kind of interesting, and I'm going to try to break down these what I think about it and where maybe some of the chats disprove my um, what I thought was going on with this group initially or before I knew anything about them. Obviously, I knew they were a thing, but so This Bobby character has been elected, and because he was elected, he's been added to the groups, right? None of these groups still exist, so there's no point in you trying to find them. They're gone. Um, but what are you basically right here? They're talking about, uh, have you heard anything about the Rhodes conviction? Um, any chatter about the Feds coming for after more militia members? So obviously they would want to know that, right? Uh, and basically a common thread amongst these is, are they coming for us? Have you heard anything? Have you talked to your intel sources, etc.? Um, uh, but they're worried about their words getting mixed up, which seems to be pretty common. Okay, so this is good sound advice. Now, it's sound advice, but the actual advice, because these guys are all cops, right? Or most of them are cops, right? You see here, we all need to show we are honest and respectful and not say anything that could be construed as calling for violence. Very good advice, right? Even though the whole thing makes me pissed as fuck, we need to be calm and respectful. Sorry for cursing. And then basically, they're agreeing with each other. Uh, and then they're talking about, hey, saw the announcement. And then literally the next paragraph is this guy needs a ride. So they're going to arrange a ride for him. Uh, bu- 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 Okay. So now that Bobby's involved, Bobby's involved. Everybody kind of sees it as positive, right? They're excited that he's going to start rebuilding the organization, making some changes. Um, right here they say Andy's death. I did some basic research. I couldn't really figure out who that was, but by everybody's standards, he's passed away. Andy dies. Bobby takes over. And it doesn't seem like there's any. I don't know if there's an election process, but it doesn't seem like Bobby self-appointed himself as the president. But I saw no reference to a vote or anything like that. So, and then hey, I'll see you tonight. Stuff like that. Um, and one thing they're trying to do now is um, work both groups, right? So there's multiple of these 3% Oath Keepers, American Patriots. There's multiple in their geolocated in their area. So they're trying to reinvigorate this relationship and reestablish a working relationship, partnerships. That's not a stupid, like if you're in an emergency situation, that's not stupid. Okay. It's surviving alone. I mean, let's say if you don't know what you're doing, 99% of the time you're going to die. You're going to be dead pretty quick, right? But if you have like communities working together with other communities, it enhances your chances for survival. Um, but yeah, they got a cabin. Like to me, it looks like an A-frame. He's talking about that. Plenty of gear, fire, everything you need. And they got guest rooms. So the leadership is getting together to discuss with the changes in two organizations how they're going to move forward. So, and then moving down, what they're doing is I I think I don't know dates on this on any of these, but obviously because of some of the things they talk about, we do have a time frame. Some of this stuff is around January 6th, right? So let's say it has to be in or after January 6th. So Bobby here, or um, he's asking Bobby, one of the leaders, is asking Bobby what was the flavor of that coffee we had at the cabin Saturday morning. And then he's responding, right? Okay, wanted to make sure you are who you really are down here at the bottom. That's smart, right? Like that's not a stupid thing to do. Uh, if somebody had taken Bobby's phone and was emulating Bobby, right, wouldn't necessarily know those details. So smart move. It does show a level of sophistication with OPSEC and counter espionage. Okay, and speaking of espionage, right? So this is a very specific text. It says, just to let you know, and this is redacted, obviously, reached out to me about learning espionage. I'll be running him as an asset per our conversation. I think he has the right temperament, but you are right that he needs much more life experience before being a field asset. I read that, and this is one of the first things I read. I was like, huh, well, maybe there's something to all this, but turns out they're just using fancy words, right? They're not running anybody as an asset. Like when they're talking asset, this person whose name's redacted uh, seems like they're just moderately smarter than the rest of the old guys, and they're computer savvy, right? So maybe this guy can use a random person search system and look up people just on a moderate level. Let's go to the next. Okay. Let me move again. Dun, 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 dun. Actually, I'm just going to go. Weird, pretty weird conversation, right? From the top. Uh, they're talking about civil rights groups. Uh, yeah. So here's what they're discussing here. And I thought this is interesting. This kind of goes along with what I was talking about the two groups. They're talking about like meeting up and having rapport with these other like-minded groups within their geographic area in the future will prevent a blue on blue. It's like, well, yeah, sure, but why are you worried about blue on blue? Which blue on blue, if you don't know, means basically the good guys attacking the good guys or friendly fire in the military, right? Things that you don't want to happen. So to prevent that, um, they're going to basically they're meeting up, collecting data, um, uh, and they're going to have conversations in red team. Red team meaning they're basically planning. And if this scenario happens, could mean a coup, right? Could be a foreign entity hacks the power grid, right? Any of these thousands of scenarios. Well, I think that they're trying to pick the most likely ones in their opinion, and then I think they're trying to like have some rapport with each other so they know how to react. So, um, this little section here was kind of interesting. Uh, he agreed to be my asset. Uh, he's going to keep everything updated. He's very eager. I want to get him on the move and just start collecting data to analyze. Um, he wants to keep it at his house. Okay, cool. This didn't make sense. I mean, I think I know what they're talking about. I have to get further into this data dump, but I did put in a slide with about 4 chats in it and just a little bit. Yeah. And then whoever this is, which is probably Bobby, he's been canceled probably for some of the previous incidents of him being accused of racism, targeted, and libeled. So have at it. He's only vulnerable because libelous, slanderous article when I was a whistleblower. I was like, huh, whistleblower, huh? Like, these guys are pretty code heavy people. Like, you don't do this, you don't do that. Um, except for dirty, but then he's making excuses. Like, you're either a snitch or you're not, right? Like, I think that's more of the way it traditionally is traditionally understood. So, except for dirty cops, the dirty cop he whistleblowed on is now facing 42 felonies. No mention of that though. So, and then let's move forward. Okay, so the other leader is this gentleman, David Coates. And I think he's a former leader now. He might have been a former leader at this point, too, just still involved. Yeah, I've redacted his cell phone and all that, obviously. So you can't see that. All right, so here's some of his chats, right? Really just kind of friendly. Uh there's not much right off the bat that concerns me at all. Nice to meet you. Reaching out so we're in contact. Normal things. Um, I trust your judgment. God bless. Nice meeting you as well, etc. Uh, this one's just kind of stating some things that are unclear. And whoever this person is, I never saw them again throughout any of the chats. So maybe they made some decisions. And I think that this is David and Bobby talking. That's my opinion. I don't know. Um, well, actually, no, not because non-classified. I can read Bobby in, so I'm not actually sure who he's talking to here. I guess I thought I knew, but I don't. Not too much going on here. Uh, Sharing and autonomy. So basically, they're talking to each other. Hey, it's kind of just reinforcing everything's fine, right? I've been on board since the beginning. Right? As a general practice, I will give you a heads up anytime I head north for any event or at risk meeting. You know, uh, so I'm going to, so we don't have a blue on blue. I am going to let you know I'm on my way when I'm coming to your area. Right? It's almost like it reminds me of motorcycle clubs, right? Like if a guy from this chapter is going to be in this chapter's area, they give a heads up, they ask for permission, stuff like that. So it seems similar to that in some way. Then they're asking here for a Proud Boy asset. They want to get in touch with some of those people, but you're going to see later. This is uh, they don't really like those guys, which I also thought was kind of interesting. It doesn't. There are some groups that you would think, looking from the outside, that these two guys are just two peas in a pod. They're really not, or at least they describe each other as not. So maybe we should take them at their word. Maybe not. Let's see. All right. They want contacts and let them know I'm the intel officer for AP3 if they want to okay. Yeah. And we're going to get into AP3, which is American Patriots 3%ers. So in these chats, they do recognize that post Jan 6, there's reason to be worried, right? There's somebody's coming. Somebody's actually probably going to come and probably going And there's so much bullshit in the mix from the media and from these guys and some, like, let's say all the like-minded groups. The perception is uh some very extreme left-wing groups went to the polling station to stop the very right-wing groups from being at the polling stations, right? Where the right-wing group is claiming they were there to prevent the left-leaning group from intimidating people. It's basically all counter intimidation. Okay, but it seems like the only intimidation was both groups meeting up and starting shit with each other. Like they went there to start shit with the other groups. Uh, some of these videos I've seen the same video on X maybe 30, 40 times. It's without really wanting to go and uncover this. It's it's fairly odd. They think they're doing the right thing though, for sure. Yeah. So mine's bigger, right? A lot of these dudes, whenever they add somebody in the group, some of these guys, like it reminds me so much of Stolen Valor. I'm not going to take the time to look up and see if this guy was actually a hunting guide in Africa, right? I'm not going to do that. But then, go back real quick. You can see a lot of this, right? Uh, One person will post something and it starts this very, very temporary, uh, like flash flood of messages, right? Like in this, they're talking about deepfake technology. They're talking about AI, and it's like, well, they're some people in there are convinced not that he is dead, but he could have died. Biden could have died at this point, and we'd never know because of deepfake. And I'm like, yeah, well, you kind of would, right? Uh, there's a little bit. There's not in some cases, not even just a little. There's a lot of validity to some of their arguments or concerns. I thought on this whole section and a future slide is talking about Jews versus Muslims, Catholics versus Muslims, etc. But let me go off. And here's why, right? And over here, it goes into you're going to see domestic violent extremism, DVE, a lot, but that's what that stands for, DVE, domestic violence extremist. So, yep, where a firearm and a nail gun attempted to forcibly enter the FBI. Yeah, so that was a crazy one too. So they're not really putting the pieces together. They're basically making a conglomeration of stories. So all of these incidents happened within this period of time. Something's obviously going on, right? Uh, really excellent synopsis. Great, cool. I mean, that's all it is, right? We need to keep our head on a swivel, post any information vetted or not. We will vet the information in this forum, but withholding information because you can't verify its authenticity on the fly is not a reason not to post. This is what the channel is for before we send it out to everybody else. So interesting. We went through this before. Keep your head on a swivel. It'll get vet. We'll vet it. Post it here first, then we'll vet, then we'll share. Whoever this guy is worried about sending unvetted stuff to not be attributed as the provocateur, which was pretty smart, you know. I don't know how to accept criticism for themselves, so I feel rare exception. Yeah. I don't know. Seems a little odd. You can't post a source. You guys know you guys know who I work with. That's vetted bona fide information. And then the next one's the intelligence. Oops. Click. The intelligence that he's pervy to. So one thing I did, I'm not surprised by any of this, right? Because these guys were cops. So uh, they're obviously aware of some of the collection capabilities for a variety of things. Helicopters, obviously police helicopters, right? You've seen the videos on YouTube. They can hunt people down. They can find them pretty easily with a helicopter, right? Using thermal. This is a PC-12, and basically what they're saying is this PC-12 had a Stingray, which is a Stingray in. They're using Stingray as a general term. What a Stingray is a fake cell tower that you connect to with your phone, and then they get all the data from it. Right? It's pretty simple. Uh, my understanding is, yeah, you can put stuff like that on an airplane. You can put it on pretty much anything, right? I don't know how much they think it's going to collect, but they share videos like, here's the evidence. You know, here's a PC-12, etc. It's a little bit more sophisticated than that, as you can see here. So uh, this is just the continuing of the conversation, right? So yeah, and then they're talking about, okay, so the PC-12, it's still over Maricopa, right? And then they know what websites to go to actually look at the flight records, right? So um, they know that you can see the air traffic in your area with these systems and go check, and basically they're sharing that. Yeah, uh, I thought this one at the bottom was kind of interesting, right? That some of these big YouTube, one of this big YouTube guy who's like recovers vehicles. He's I think he's the only civilian owner of a Blackhawk, but they think that one of the Blackhawks they see is perhaps his Blackhawk. Uh, Pretty interesting, right? So there's multiple things with roads. Establishing the timeline is really difficult. We don't have date time stamp groups on a lot of these pictures, so putting it together is quite difficult because they talk kind of about the same stuff, and then they refer to things in the past and refer to in their timeline things that are obviously current. But rule this right. You say, how did whatever his first name is, how did Rhodes uh, get his eye hurt, or however you want to do it? If you go to Wikipedia, it basically says, oh, while Rhodes was in college, uh, he was married to X, Y, and Z, who did a stint as a exotic dancer at this club from these days to pay for him while he's in school. And then it's just the next sentence is, oh, during that time period, he was dropped to 22 and shot himself in the eye. And that's it. That's like literally all it says. I'm like, wow. Like, what did his wife working at an exotic dance club have to do anything with him shooting his eye? But they throw it in there. It's I don't know. Search for yourself. It's pretty funny to see. I hope people in the future don't describe me as like crazy shit like that, but I guess we'll see. Okay. So this one's kind of interesting. Uh, I haven't reading the actual article about this, about the insider. Somehow the Utah Attorney General is involved with the group, like uh, as a member, supporter, something. I don't know the details yet. I just know that's a real. There's an involvement somewhere. I just haven't got there in the data yet. So they are aware that, and I was like, "What's their fascination with the Attorney General's office?" But they're very aware that the Attorney General's office was burglarized, a laptop was taken, right? This is them talking about it. Haha. Uh, if I were to respond to this, I think that would lead to some legal problems. Then I was like, oh, well, does he know what's actually happening behind the scenes? Perhaps, maybe, maybe. You know what you are saying is true, but it is way unlikely that the perp would see it here. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's a little concerning. Um, Cyberdoc is saying, well, it could be a setup. Someone steals a laptop, plants incriminating evidence. Sure. I mean, that's happened. I don't know how often that happens from a law enforcement perspective, but I don't think it'd be legal to do in the first place from law enforcement. I can't see a scenario where that would be ethical, legal, moral, but I could be wrong. Um, and basically, the person who's posting the next little section um, is talking about intelligence they're privy to. Uh, XYZ group, basically white supremacist, domestic violent extremists conducted attacks previously against LGBT community in Colorado Springs, and then there was some type of attack in Slovakia. That group went out and basically promoted additional violent acts. And then they go back to the break-in, right? So there's a break-in. Haven't found any more information yet. Sounds like an open door / tablet stolen. If it was the good guys, I hope they cover their tracks well. I think the AG has been beaten down enough by the executive orders that he is being a good enough little boy. And now Cox and Henderson, those are those are elected politicians. I think that's what I think of what it makes me think. But so then basically you're talking about they're still looking at it. The sheriff should have some answers by tomorrow, waiting on the AG response. And for some reason they throw in, this is related to the excessive government immunity increases implemented in a series of legislations with BLM riots in 2020 as an excuse. They see that as resulting in a dramatic or drastic increase in government overreach under the shield of those new immunities. And it threatens citizens' investigation and information, increased immunities, and reduced accountability, right? Just keep us in the loop. I really want to believe he's a good guy. Maybe he is just running scared from the alleged attacks. So we'll see where this goes. If they're the good guys, he's like, let them make copies of the hard drive. That doesn't copy deleted files normally. Deleted files, many can be recovered, but not always. Yeah, that's true. But it really depends on what you're using and your level of forensic sophistication. Most of the people I've worked with in the past, really, it has to be a really corrupt file to not be able to put it back together. So, and I still haven't figured out. So, if I were to respond, that helps. I think I would have some legal problems. You know what you are saying is true, but it is way unlikely that the perp would see it here. And that goes back. We saw that before. And I'm like, I'm not really sure what that means yet. I'm kind of hoping it becomes apparent later, but for now, I mean, that's what we got, right? So the news articles and this, there's something going on. Now I haven't figured out. They It doesn't seem like they orchestrated the robbery, but it seems like they know about it. They like, you know, like something's going on. Certainly, or maybe nothing. Maybe they're just talking shit to try to one up each other. Who knows? We'll know by the end. That's for sure. Okay, so I saw a lot of people. Interesting comment, right? And I'm going to move me from the screen in just a second. Um, he's talking to somebody who he sees as like-minded. You know, obviously there are limits to what law enforcement officers can tell other people, civilians, before it's different than being interfering with a existing open case or um, some type of transparency law, right? The information can get out there just naturally. But yeah, in this case, so David seems to think that that sheriff is a super reliable source. and he's an exceptional individual. So, and then they're like, oh well, yeah. Well, in that case, when he's up for re-election, let me know. I'm gonna donate. Okay. also agree with this, right? You can disagree with the Israeli government and not be anti-Semitic. I mean, you can be critical of laws, rules, legislation, etc., actions by the government. Doesn't make you anti-Semitic, but in this context, it was, and they're pointing that out. Again, they mentioned that the leftist threats are not being talked about, but they think the left and the foreign threat is a bigger threat than the right wing, period. But they cherry pick a few cases of right wing terrorist, and it's interesting they use that term here. So people in their same realm, let's say, they do not like the right wing terrorist. Okay, at all. It's narrative, not necessarily facts. Okay, then we're going around the narrative. They're going to talk for a little bit. Da, da. And this one, yeah, supporting Iranians in their protest against the government, but you say the same thing about the Saudis or Islamic nation. Quite hypocritical. Let's see where they're going with this. Oh, yeah. Okay. So they're really not happy about what's going on in England, Wales, whereas their perception is a huge swath of the land's been taken over by Islam. Christians are now the minority. I think that's true, but I don't. It's not something it doesn't affect me, so I don't really know these things off the top of my head. But and so they're equating that to the open southern border is basically the same type of operation, but against us, right? So that's creating our replacements in our society. They're not assimilating into United States culture for sure, and will be easier to control. And hey, to an extent, we're seeing that sometimes. It's like, like why'd you give these people who just crossed the border a cell phone and a debit card? Like, or what if, like, I have family members who are starving. And then this guy says, this is one, if you hate Muslims, everybody I know who hates Muslims talks about it, right? And they're pretty open about it. But these guys, it's kind of something we're seeing. And no problems with Muslims that are peaceful. But the media is acting like Britain being minority Christian is a victory. If we're going to tolerate Islam, why don't we apply the same reasoning to Christians? So it's basically just saying bias in the news, etc. And then this guy says, I'm atheist, by the way, but it's hypocritical to not give Christians respect. Probably should just equalize it, right? A little bit. Okay, that's the repeat. Historically speaking, he said, talking this, I thought this was funny. Knew some old NSA people who were in Iran during the fall of the Shah. They were spying on the Russians in Iran. And we operated with their Iranian counterparts. They would have dinners together with their family, and as soon as the Shah was gone, those same counterparts were trying to kill them, and they had to flee for their lives. That's true. I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't hear it from the direct source, etc. I hope they recorded that before they passed. No one wants to admit Islam has special problems. Yes, there are good Muslims and bad Christians, but not at the same level. Um, and then they're arguing basically, same with the left and right. There's good people on the left. There's good people on the right. He's libertarian. He's got a lot of problems with Republicans, and he calls them out when that happens. That's not a bad view to have, right? You need to be self-critical of like where you lean towards. Otherwise, you get stuck in the echo chamber, and then you're making decisions based on how other people want you to make decisions, which is really stupid, right? And basically, again, what they're saying is, hey, I'm tired of left wing terrorists aren't being viewed as they're not being viewed as a threat. And in some cases, like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have seen on the news, middle of COVID when there's the riots happening, things like that, right? No masks, no stuff, and they're like, "Well, it's okay. It's nighttime." Like they made every excuse they could, like to, well, you know, it's like our team's out there in the streets, so yes, it's okay for them, but it's not okay for you, and that did happen a lot, right? Down at the bottom, cherry pick cases, yeah, I mean that happens. Obviously, if you're biased to one side or the other, you put out information that supports your bias. And I agree with this. Agreed. I'm pretty sure sawing somebody's head off because they're Jewish is pretty anti-Semitic. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty anti-Semitic. I'd say so. And the same response, though, I don't want indiscriminate bombing of Islamic schools, right? That's not. I don't think that's a good view to take. I don't think that's a good reaction. I don't want to see innocent people get killed. Now, if you're at war with somebody, I mean, so be it, right? But any moral society would um, try to um, limit that from happening. You know, in general. Okay, prepping and awareness. All right, let me go. And down at the bottom, I thought this was just interesting because it's probably one of the truest statements here, because of the way the population's dispersed in Utah, right? Less people shoot when the starving hordes. That is in other countries that have had serious disasters. That's exactly what happened. Like, the everything in a populated area or cities goes away and very quickly in like 48 hours, right? Then there's nothing. Then when the power goes out and then they can't pump water, and you know those people from the city who are left go to the rural areas. And I've joked about it many times. It's like, well, okay, um, let them come over. They won't make it very far. But yeah, that's kind of true. I think that's exactly what will happen in reality. Like this, but they get really, really, really attached to like this. Well, I got a SKS or I got a Mini 14, best rifle ever made. It's like every rifle to you guys is the best rifle ever made. It's just the one you own. So you've decided that that's the best, right? Nothing really special about a Mini 14. Right. And then they kind of talk about it, you know, and then they go back to the anti-Semitic stuff. Um, let's see. This one's kind of interesting, right? So, um, da, 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 da. Okay. So this guy's saying he registers as a Republican so he can vote in the primaries. We're talking about a few things. Um, some changes basically to the Republican Party led to the people that are in, and they don't like that. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one real quick. Okay. Yeah, they're talking about this accident that happened at Kadena Air Base. I'm not sure which one. There's been a few over the years. But down here at the bottom, right? This is another incident. We already talked about one of them, but now I don't know if this is the same instance or if this is a different instance, but they actually post more. They post videos, something on Twitter, and obviously it was Twitter at the time. So I mean, it gives us a rough timeline. But um, with modern open source radar, we can even track the aircraft that have their transponders turned off. There are a bunch of OSINT sources dedicated to tracking and identifying such aircrafts. ADSB, that's uh, a transponder system. Um, is the best. There were ones that figured out the um, rendition craft were flying out of Camp Perry. You can Google Camp Perry. I won't comment very much on that. So, okay. He stole security badges. Totally not an inside job. They're trying to cover up, right? Right. They're going back to the attorney general's office getting robbed. And then I thought this was interesting. So this guy, who's actually redacted, shows up a lot. He's already been in the conversations before, but it's interesting that it's just random in there. Um, you know, and I don't maybe more about that guy because usually he's referred to only by one name. Um, so I guess we'll find out. And they're talking about another, or this is the same crash. Their chats to them, it probably made sense at the time. Now that we're looking at this years later, it's like, what the hell are these guys talking about? Okay. This is kind of, this is okay. I can't stand the QAnon people personally, right? I think it's just idiotic at best. Um, even to believe let's say would you call it, the story of QAnon as it is, it's anybody who's been in the military, I see, but like if you really believe that, I mean, that's like, come on, dude, that's not how anything works, Um, and here basically they're saying it's they're sharing a story. I haven't been able to find much more about this, but in 2009, when Joe Biden was the vice president, he apparently groped or cupped a female Secret Service agent breast, and then the Secret Service boyfriend went to go slug Biden, but was stopped by other agents. Um, and the guy's probably right about this one. He says down there, probably QAnon bullshit, but here it is. I'd say likely. You would. Some people would think that the QAnon thing and the Oath Keepers would kind of be in the same realm, but I don't think there's an indication of that. Also, the white nationalist thing. Uh, they never the actual white nationalists they don't like at all. They want to be unassociated completely them and those groups. They don't like them. They're not interested in talking to them. They see them as domestic terrorists. They see them as criminals. Here, this was south of me. Didn't affect me up here, but they're basically they go in and they talk about some of the attacks against the power stations. They use rifles and some. I think it was just rifles of various calibers. They shot the transformers, and I can't remember, but they hit more than one location, if I remember correctly. And people were saying, well, it's definitely people from the okay, yeah, they throw in these random stories, far right plot again, exactly. Do you believe in coincidence? This is a global elitist cabal narrative. Also, this is Al Jazeera. So weird. I think it's a setup, false flag. Who describes themselves as white nationalist, right? Left nut groups do. And they use the same term for us. I just don't want them to redefine bad actors and then for us to pick up without strong statements expressing our doubts. Yeah, I mean, basically, what they're saying is we didn't do it. We're not with those people. We don't want to make an incorrect statement. I mean, they're pretty adamant that they're not white nationalists, right? Some of the other pictures that I didn't post, because if you redact everybody in a picture, I mean, it's just blob on the screen, right? I mean, what does it just show a group of people, you know? Um, they're not just white people in these groups. I mean, that's the fact about it, right? At least so far, the Oath Keepers, the Oath Keepers are not all white. Now, think about it. Where they live, what is the normal percentage of ethnic groups within Utah, right? Mostly white, so the law enforcement's also going to be mostly white. Probably the veterans who move there are probably mostly going to be white. And I don't have anything to indicate that their group is anything different than the normal dissipation of ethnicity within the population of Utah. But yeah, no, I mean, the pictures are 100% indicate it's not just white folks. And they're just basically saying consider every avenue, false flag. And I don't agree with this. A lot of the white supremacists, white nationalists that I know, it's like, how do you know somebody's a white nationalist? They'll tell you. Yeah, and this is a random one that was later, so I cut it out. But sounds like these are nutty white nationalist idiots, right? And I thought that's what they actually were in reality. Let me go off. There we go. Told me the guys posted plans at the substations they want to shoot to do the most damage. So basically, they're taking somebody had put out a guide. If you're attacking a substation, this is what you need to attack to shut the power off, etc. Right. And then he said he had it, but he planned on downloading it, but then he didn't want it on his system. Says the white nationalist in Friends Chan. I almost think he meant to write 4chan here. Not really sure though. I would think that's supposed to be 4chan, right? Yeah. But I don't know. I haven't looked that up. Yeah. But he's looking for intel on future attacks that may occur so they can notify authorities if needed. They don't want these things to happen, obviously. Da, da, da. That's hey, that's a little bit of red team right here. It's opinion, but yeah, I mean, he can kill you, sure, but if it's really cold outside and you don't have a fireplace and you don't have a way to warm yourself up, you're gonna die, right? So when the electricity goes out in some of these areas, now they're in Utah, everybody's. I mean, I don't know. I don't live in Utah. I've only been there a few times, but from what I've seen, the houses do have alternative heat, like fireplaces and things like that, or gas. Broad term, white nationalists. I would not use it. Way too broad. It's a common moniker to sweep a lot of. Okay, well, hey, I tend to agree with that. It's one of those things. If like you vote this way, you're a racist, misogynist, homophobic, etc. All of these things, and then the other side is just a blessing to society, right? Okay, that's what it is when you. Um, I feel the same thing about Democrats and Republicans. If you're a Republican and you say that the Democrats are a bunch of whiny little pussies, right? That's a cheap, um, unsophisticated way to put everybody into a group, right? Like saying that Trump's stupid. It's like, well, no. I mean, he's a billionaire and he ran 5 companies simultaneously. It's like that you can't be stupid and have that work. So what I think what he's saying is, hey, white nationalist, pretty broad term. If you say everybody on this side is a white nationalist, you're wrong, and I would agree with that. Okay, so we're back at Metcalf Power Station. Okay, back with the power station, right? More concerns with white nationalists. Uh, okay, the alphabet boys. That's the feds, right? So this guy is working on communicating without basically the communications going to the feds. It's like, yeah, sure, try hard, whatever you got to do, man. Uh, Tried contacting his friend in North Carolina, see if he can get anything more. Gathering some intel on the power sabotage stuff. Sounds like these are nutty white nationalist idiots again. Uh, okay, and then down here, basically they've repeated themselves. Um, yeah. All right. So this is kind of interesting. Let me move myself so you. Yeah, we did an audit and we lost like $1 billion, right? Or in this case, like $1 trillion was unaccounted, and then 9/11 happened. So the conspiracy theorists are saying, well, um, the people in charge of the U.S. government freaked out because of that statement, and then they did 9/11 to get everybody's mind off the $1 trillion missing. So, uh, yeah, seem doesn't seem to be legit, right? So, and then kind of just nonsense after that. Let's go to the next. Okay. This is interesting. Um, they I can't tell whether they like Elon or don't like Elon. It seems like it's trending more like they like what Elon's saying, but they think electric cars are stupid, and a bunch of other things like that, right? But they're like, oh well, hey, now Could be damning evidence to show how social media interfered in the 2020 election. And they think that could start some serious shit. And they're kind of putting this stuff out there to be ready. So let's see. Been calling over for years. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of that in there. So it's kind of a long one, right? And this was double the size. And so I So I think I'm gonna have to do something about that, right? Um, yeah, and some of them are really bad, like things that I won't even say on the internet. And it's just out there, out there, out there, out there, right? For socials, let me go off for a minute, then I'll. Now let me stop presenting. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, well, let me make me big. There we go. That's a little better. Okay, so I'm going to end it here. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. This is not the first video I've done on this. I've been doing talks on this for years. You can find those talks by searching Wally Prather or Wally Prather intelligence value of Russian data dumps, turning data into intelligence. Talks on the DNC. We went through an Indian NGO the other day. There are billions and billions and probably a billion to the third power data like that on the internet, right? You just have to know how to go out and grab it, and I know how to go out and grab it, right? I also know how to take it, utilize it, analyze it, and turn it into something that could be usable. These are just examples. I really enjoy doing this. right? And I'm trying to give my opinion about what I find, or like, okay, well, a lot of people will be like, okay, well, it's just a list of people in China, like with CCP cameras. It's like, yeah, well, they're also threatening to go across that little piece of water right there and into a sovereign country. Probably be good to know who some of these people are before they get on the boat, right? Uh, you know, maybe not. Maybe somebody proves me wrong. Haven't been wrong in a while on that type of stuff. So I invite it, and feel free to criticize. Um, at that, hey, this seems a little bit politically charged. Obviously, if you read just about anything, there's going to be parts in these documents that you agree with, and then there's going to be things that you don't. Um, I'm trying really hard to not be backed into a corner politically. I don't have any exceptionally strong views to the left or to the right. I'd like people to get along for the betterment of America. I would like um, everybody's voices be heard. You know, I don't think that what's happening politically now should be used as an excuse to do something bad against a group of people that you don't necessarily like. And I think on both sides, that's absolutely terrible, right? So just don't do it, right? Focus on yourself, focus on family. Um, don't worry about politics. Thing At some point, things change. Things change naturally over time. Just relax. Everything's gonna be okay. Some things, yeah, maybe they do immediately and directly affect you. Um, if that's the case, that sucks, and I'm sorry to hear that. If it's not the case, then do something to create change. You know, Start with yourself, and once you have yourself and your life in order, then go help somebody else. Maybe that's a good way to think of it. But listen, really thank you all for tuning in. Like I said, please reach out. There's going to be a lot more of these. Obviously, I'm still getting used to these systems and YouTube's rules, and just how to put all this stuff together. And I don't intend to stop. Um, you know, things may ebb and flow. Sometimes it's going to be a lot more videos. Sometimes it's going to be a lot less, right? But I'm going to continue to put these out. Um, and I'm going to continue to put these out, and I hope you enjoy them. And obviously, hey, if you don't enjoy it but you want to see something different, let me know. Let's get it on. So, thanks everybody, and you guys all have a good night. And thanks for tuning in to the Where's Wally podcast. Bye. Oopsie.